Everyone, and welcome to the first event in the 2021 Ocean Health Speaker Series. My name is Allison Wood, and I'm the co-founder of Ocean Ambassadors Canada. And with me tonight from Ocean Ambassadors, we have Chantel Hancock, who's our programs coordinator. And the first thing that I'd like to do today is we have a special guest with us, Mayor Marianne Booth. And Mayor Booth, are you with us?
I am.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Hope you can all see and hear me.
Yes.
Give me the thumbs up.
Yes.
Good. Did you want me to give my remarks, Allison?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to bring greetings on behalf of my council, the District of West Vancouver. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're holding this meeting on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and Musqueam Nation. We respect and recognize them as nations in this territory, as well as their historic connections to the lands and waters around us since time immemorial. And I'd also like to thank Karen Storry for taking the time to educate us tonight. I probably have crossed paths with Karen at Metro Vancouver, and I look forward to her presentation. In West Vancouver, the ocean is really part of our day-to-day life, from Ambleside to Lighthouse Park to Horseshoe Bay. We see it, we walk beside it, we play in it, we drive over it, and we swim in it, and we love it. This series is a great way for each of us to reflect on what the ocean means to us and how we as a community can do more to support its health. I also want to thank Allison Wood, and Allison and I actually have known each other for a long time through our connection, through our kids at Pauline Johnson School. And I have been following all the work that she and her partners in Ocean Ambassadors have been doing to bring awareness to the threats to our oceans, our sea life, and our ocean mammals. And she has built Ocean Ambassadors into such a successful program with the hundreds of young people she has introduced to the joy of being on the water, so that the next generation will steward and protect and cherish our largest natural asset on the planet. So thank you so much, Allison, and I really look forward to the first in this series and the others that follow. So well done.
Thank you very much, Mayor Booth, and thanks for joining us. The goal of Ocean Ambassadors Canada is to connect people with the ocean, this amazing place and this vital resource, and to educate people about the threats to our ocean, and then really to inspire them to take action. And that's what this speaker series is all about. The format for tonight, we'll have Karen Storry has a presentation for us with some slides. And at the end of the presentation, there'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions. And we really encourage you, and she's really excited about taking your questions. So as questions come up during the presentation, please just type them into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And Chantel's going to be collecting those questions throughout the presentation. And then at the end of the talk, she'll present them on our behalf. So without any more waiting, I'd like to introduce, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Karen Storry. So Karen is the senior engineer with Metro Vancouver Solid Waste Services, and it's her job to focus on reducing single-use items in our region. So to tell you lots more about that, here's Karen Storry. Thanks so much, Karen.
Thank you, Allison. I'm just always excited to talk about waste reduction and to talk about oceans. And let's see if my slides, can everyone see my slides and hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm getting a nod, so we're good to go. Okay, so let's get going. I, like you, love the ocean. I'm a swimmer, I'm a kiteboarder, I'm a terrible surfer, but I like doing it. I like scuba diving. I love being in the water, and I just cannot imagine a world in which there's more plastic than fish in the sea. And that's what scientists predict will happen by 2050 if we don't do anything about it. So the short version of how I ended up here today is about 12 years ago, I read a book called Cradle to Cradle, and it really solidified for me the biggest problem we have that we face as a society is the consumption of materials. So we can solve the energy problem by capturing the abundance of solar, tidal, and other sources of energy that nature provides. But especially 12 years ago, we didn't really have a clear path forward for materials. So I left my career in construction management for waste management. And I'll spare you the details of my work and just cut to the chase. So the summary is, we are part of a complex adaptive system. And this means that we're all connected. And it means that the decisions we make every day not only affect ourselves, but they affect our planet and all the living beings on the planet. And when we study systems from experts like Donella Meadows, we learn that policy changes to business models and our personal choices can make big changes. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So before you change the rules of a system, which is part of what we do at Metro Vancouver, we do programs and policies to reduce single-use items. You really need to understand the system. So the first thing we do is look at, okay, how big is the problem? So our first step was to get some data, and we do waste composition studies, and we looked into just how many single-use items are being disposed. And so when I talk about single-use items, I mean retail bags, disposable cups, takeout containers, straws, and utensils. And in 2018, which is the first time we did this study, we learned that Metro Vancouverites throw out 1.1 billion single-use items per year. So that's equivalent to 440 items per person. So what this says to me is our individual actions matter. With 2.5 million people in our region, using 1 to 2 items per person per day really starts to add up. And in terms of where we see these items in the system, they're pretty much throughout the whole system. So they're being disposed in single family homes, in apartment buildings, and we also see them in the waste that's collected from businesses. So we really need to tackle this problem from all fronts. And we did a lot more research about the system before we published our findings, which are on our website. But the way I would like to summarize it is, recycling is good, but reduce and reuse is better, especially for things like single-use plastics, which take up a lot of resources to be made only to be used for a short time. So at this point, we knew where we wanted to go. We wanted to put in place programs and policies that reduce single-use items. But the question was, okay, how do we get there? So we started with a toolkit. And since as a region, we don't actually have the ability to put in regulations to reduce single-use items because we don't have authority to do that at this time. This was the option we had. And so a lot of our research and information is in our single-use item reduction toolkit. And as we did this, we talked to a lot of people and we learned what was confusing for people about single-use items. And so those are some of the things that I want to share with you next. So the first thing, one of the most common questions is compostable plastics. And my message on this one is fruit scraps aren't garbage. You definitely want to divert your food scraps to your green bin, which many Metro Vancouverites do. Probably many of us on the Zoom tonight do, which is excellent because it really helps protect our climate from methane that's created in the landfill when the organics go to disposal. But when it comes to compostable plastics, the key challenge is that when it gets to the facility, they can't tell which ones are biodegradable, which ones are regular plastics. And because people accidentally put different types of plastic in their green bins, what happens to the compostable plastics is they're screened out and sent to disposal. And so our message is to keep plastic out of the green bin. And so that's one of the most common and most confusing things. And I'm happy to answer questions about that. I'm sure I'll get a couple. So then the question is, what do we do? If it's not compostable plastics, which materials should we use? And so as many of you probably already know, reusable is best. So we always encourage people to use reusable. I find it least confusing to bring a mug and then wash it than to figure out which bin the different materials go in. And then recycling is good, and especially items with recycled content. And if you're in the position that you get to select which materials you're going to be distributing, then you would really want to first check that they can be accepted in a recycling program. And you can go to Recycle BC. They collect most of the materials for residential recycling, and you can check on their website whether or not those items are acceptable. And I have one example. I don't think it's going to show up very well on the video, but this is the kind of thing that if you have to use plastic, this is 100% recycled and it's clear and it's #1 PET. So I know if I put this in my curbside blue box that it's definitely going to get recycled. And it's already part of recycled content, which really helps the plastic markets move forward, because if we don't purchase recycled material, then when we put it in our blue box, there's less places for it to go. And just to provide you some confidence, because people are sometimes unsure what happens to their recycling and they hear different things in the news. In BC, our material that goes in our blue box is regulated by the province. And so you can read the reports online, and I've read them, and our material is recycled locally at a local facility. So you can ask me more questions about that later, but I just want to provide people with confidence. If you are recycling in BC, it will get properly recycled. And now this is my other one that I really like to cover, because when we started talking about the toolkit and the different items, one of the most common points of confusions were what we call as engineers plastic lined hot paper cups, and what everyone else calls coffee cups. And so this is a photo that you can see that my colleague soaked a coffee cup in water, and actually all of these coffee cups are plastic lined. And so they can be recycled, and yes, you can put them in your blue box, but they're very difficult to recycle. So it's one that I think is an important one to tackle, because it's really hard, even though they can be recycled, to make new products. Although in our system, if you put them in your blue box after rinsing them, you can, it will go to a recycling center and it will be made into probably a toilet paper or something like that. So just getting back to the toolkit, what our toolkit did and still does on our website is it kind of looked at a bunch of key considerations for a range of policy options. And since we've published it, and even a little bit before we published it, several different levels of government has started to implement regulations. And so this is just a bit of an overview of the different regulations that are now out there or about to be out there. So the government of Canada is looking at banning certain single-use plastics by the end of the year. They're going to confirm which ones they're planning to ban and what their plan is. They're also looking at other measures with no specific timelines yet, but the issues around labeling, we often get asked, well, why is it labeled compostable if it can't go in the green bin? And so those kind of challenges are being looked at. Also encouraging recycled content so that we have more of these kind of products that already have recycled material in them. And also making it so, this is kind of technical, but harmonizing EPR. So that means basically that all the programs across Canada will accept similar items. So sometimes we have people move here from Ontario and then they email me and say, well, this is recyclable in Ontario, can I recycle it here? And depending on the product, I might have a different answer. The other level of government that's taking action is the province of BC. So they've actually extended what's accepted in the recycling programs, what's regulated to be accepted in the residential recycling programs. And by 2023, you'll be able to put more things in your blue bin. And also they've been approving municipal bylaws, which I'll get to on the next slide, and also looking at if it's possible to develop a legal framework for provincial bans. So there's a lot happening in the space of policy to help really reduce the number of single-use items that are distributed and protect our oceans. And locally, we have some of our member jurisdictions that have moved forward, and this is a bit of a summary of the different things that are happening. You'll be hard pressed now that it's in place to find a foam takeout container or cup in the city of Vancouver. And some of these bylaws, just to be clear, haven't been implemented yet, but they've been approved and they're in the process of being implemented. So if you're like, well, she presented this bylaw and I was in this city and it didn't seem to be in place, that's what's happening, is these things are all kind of in the implementation phase. And you can go to the websites to find out the exact details for all of these cities. And so what we're seeing is that the rules of the systems are changing. And now it's really interesting because as a result, we're able to change our habits and the businesses are also able to change. And so in 2019, actually, Tom Saki, the founder of TerraCycle and Loop, presented at Metro Vancouver's annual Zero Waste Conference about the idea of packaging of a service. So most of us don't really care about the ice cream bucket. We only care about the ice cream. And so the idea that Tom presented at our conference is that maybe the ice cream buckets could be reusable and they could be refilled over and over again. So we could still get people the ice cream without any of the waste. So now I've talked about how the rules of the system are changing and how businesses are stepping up to the plate with innovation, but there's one more element of the system that needs to change, and that's us, because we're part of the system. And if we don't change our habits, then we're not going to be able to protect our oceans. And we really know that it's the small daily habits that really add up and make a difference. And so to kind of lead by example, I'm going to share with you my habits that I've adopted in an effort to protect our oceans. And so this is March 1st, so very recently. I was so excited. I rarely post on Facebook, but this time I did. And it's because I was able to participate in a reusable containers program. So what happened is I ordered a burrito on DoorDash, and instead of it coming in a recyclable container, it came in the steel container with a silicone lid in the photo. And I was pretty excited about this because this means that I can order items and get them in a reusable container instead of a recyclable container. And so to kind of explain a bit better, I took this second photo because my friend's like, well, how does that work? Like, what did you do? Because these are all new habits that we're learning. And so it's all a little confusing, but basically the DoorDasher dropped it off at my house. And then I just had to give it a rinse and drop it off at a participating location. And luckily, even with the pilot, there's only a couple locations, but luckily the one is very close to my house. So for me, this was very exciting because it's really a big step forward in reducing waste. Another habit that I've been able to change is how I grocery shop. So I haven't really figured it out for everything that I buy, but for items that I use on the regular, I've been able to go to my local zero waste refill store. And even during the pandemic, what they've been able to do is provide me with these glass jars full of all the things that I love. And then I use up the materials and bring them back. And they give me my deposit and give me my new order in jars that they've already sanitized. So these are some of the new business that are out there and we can participate in to reduce our waste. And then my next habit is my favorite daily habit, is drinking coffee. I love my coffee, and working collaboratively with my lovely baristas from my local coffee shop, I was able to find a safe way to continue to bring my mug during the pandemic. So my lovely barista is demonstrating what's called the contactless pour, where I put my cup down in the public space and he pours the shot without contacting my cup. And then she pours the beautifully steamed oat milk, and voila, I have my contactless pour, flat white. And it's a simple daily habit, but if I drink coffee almost every day, which I do, this is saving almost 300 cups per year. And if 2.5 million people, although probably not everyone drinks as much coffee as I do, did the same thing, then it's these small daily habits that really start to add up. And now you're going to learn what my other favorite beverage is, which is kombucha, fermented tea. I know it's not for everyone, but I quite like it. And I've been training myself to stop getting these glass bottles and to really try to remember my growlers, because when I do, I can drop it off into the bin at my local brewery and they will fill it up with delicious kombucha. And well, sorry, not the ones I drop off. They fill up a sanitized one that they already have. Like, I've never been to Souk Brewery, but somebody else that goes to my brewery has, and I got their sanitized growler. And so these are all things that we can participate in to reduce waste. And as a bonus, it's cheaper to buy the kombucha and the growlers. And it's also, this is my favorite part, it's a lot less trips to the recycling room with those little bottles. That's like not one of my favorite chores. So a lot less trips to the recycling room if you switch to this refill system. And I just want to give a shout out because there's actually quite a few other businesses that are now starting up and allowing us to have better habits. One that's actually been around for a long time, which is featured on this slide, is the industry standard bottle. So very few people know about this, but this bottle is very common. It's one that many beers are put in, and across Canada, it's used. And in BC, these industry standard bottles are filled up as many as 15 times per container. So every time you return your glass bottles, they're not actually recycled, they're refilled several times first. And going back to my mantra, recycling is good, but reduce and refill is better. And so I think that program is great and it's very easy to participate in. There's also the UBC mug share that is happening, and the Nata grocery store, which I shop at from time to time. And I've been really resisting using these really convenient sounding meal delivery services where you get all the ingredients and then they give you a chef designed recipe for you to make, because I was worried about all the little containers that come with that. And so Fresh Prep, a local company, just started this month to provide those items in reusable containers. So now you can still get your chef design meals, but they're in reusable containers that you return. And just the other day, Soap Stand texted me and said that they are now doing reusable refills at some of the local grocery stores. So you can check that out as well. And I wanted to just take a pause because I've been talking probably for, I don't know, 20 minutes now. And I just wanted to see if we could get some chatter in the chat. If people could share what are their habits, what are their ideas, how are they protecting the ocean? So please do share. I know these are just my habits that I've adopted and hopefully are inspiring for folks to kind of do something similar, but please share with us what are the cool things you see that businesses are doing around the region, and what are the habits that you're now trying to think about to reduce your waste and to protect our oceans. And just one last slide while we're having you fill this out in the chat. A little preview of what is next? And so right now we have our textiles campaign out, teaching people to repair their textiles. And coming up this year, we have our single-use item reduction campaign. So I'm hoping once we launch, Ellison will share it with you and you'll be able to really help us get the word out and encourage and inspire other people to have these really awesome single-use item reduction habits. And that's all for my presentation. So now over to Ocean Ambassadors for the questions, and also maybe we can have a quick peek, open up the chat and have a quick peek at what ideas we're getting in the, we have a deodorant from Lush. So that's like, and shampoo bars, different ideas are coming through. Laundry strips instead of soap, just buying less. That's a good idea as well. Here comes in. Oh, bulk barns. Yeah, some people are saying that their ideas or their habits that they had unfortunately weren't able to carry through with the pandemic. But when we talk to people about single-use item reduction, they say they really want to participate in a safe way. So that's going to be part of our focus for the campaign, is making sure that anything we suggest is still safe for people to do. So there's all kinds of things coming in. Just bringing your own Tupperware for leftovers is a great idea, and cutlery wraps. So I think I'm going to pause there. Keep adding the ideas, and Ocean Ambassadors will then populate their website with all of your fantastic ideas and tips, because we really want to help people participate in single-use item reduction. And I will hand it over to Ocean Ambassadors for the questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. That was awesome. Thank you so much for all that information. We're going to go ahead with a few of the questions that we have now. You did answer a few of them along the way, so I'm not going to re-ask those. But our first question is from Charlotte. So her question is, the plastics industry is big and powerful with lots of money. They will counter any attempt to change this use of plastic. What will Metro Vancouver do to combat this?
Well, at Metro Vancouver, our job is to understand the system, and part of the system includes the plastics industry. And so when we're making policy, we definitely listen to them and hear what they have to say, and use it to inform what we do. And I have to say, when it comes to plastics, there's many plastics that we probably still need in society. We're not going to be able to move away and have no plastics. So the plastics industry will still be an important part of our manufacturing of goods and our recycling of goods. And there's an important role for them to play. So I think it's, when it comes to how are we going to manage the industry, I think the idea I have anyways is to talk to them and have discussions with them and find out where we have the win-wins and focus on those.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Charlotte. Our second one comes from Eddie. So do our soft plastics still get shipped overseas, and is there a market for them?
Okay, so there's kind of two streams right now. There's the streams that go to the residential recycling in the depots, and those have markets and are recycled locally. And I know over the past year, I don't have all the details, but I know there's been some challenges in the commercial sector with soft plastics, but those are also some often very clean streams. And so they still can find markets. It just really depends on what type of film and how clean it is and how clear it is. So residential recycling has always remained really good, but I think what people have heard is about the challenges that there have been in the commercial recycling end of things, and those markets have been up and down, especially with some of the films that were dirtier or had more challenges finding markets. So I think that's what probably this question comes from.
Perfect, thank you. And our third question comes from Lauren. Can you recycle the plastics made up of recycled material? And if so, how many times can it be recycled?
So yes, this is a recycled content item. It will be recycled again. And right now with our current technologies, I've heard the numbers around, about 5 to 7 times, but I think there's some work being done on chemical recycling technologies that would really allow us to almost infinitely recycle the plastics, although there's some challenges with commercializing that type of technology. So currently several times, but hopefully moving forward more and more. So.
Perfect. Thank you for your question, Lauren. Ole also had a question. How can we help the staff of municipal governments who are trying to reduce single-use plastic to get the support that they need from our elected leaders or senior levels of municipal government management?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think it's important just to make sure that when you're asked and when people talk about these kind of actions that you participate. So I think we had a bit of a disconnect when we talked to some of our focus groups. I know it's not this group that I'm speaking to tonight because this group is highly engaged and loves oceans, and that's why they're part of the Ocean Ambassadors. But I think one thing you can do to help us is to talk to your friends and share your love and get them to participate as well. Because when we talk to folks about single-use item reduction, they wanted to do it, but they struggled with these habits. And so I think the more we tell people about these habits, the more they'll become common and the more we can kind of move towards reduction of single-use items, because we're all doing the same thing, and then it will be the logical choice to kind of move in that direction because we're all doing it anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Ole. We also have a question from Claudia. So what happens with soft plastics and why can they not be added to our blue bin system yet?
Right, so right now the soft plastics are accepted at depot, but they're not accepted in the blue bin program. And that's because when you mix them with the blue bin program material and they go to these facilities to do the sorting, everything gets dumped out and it gets put on a conveyor belt, and then there's a bunch of screens and machinery that spin around. And when that machinery is spinning around, if the soft plastics are in it, it wraps around the machinery and causes challenges. And that's why, in order to make sure it can be recycled, it's dropped off at depots instead of collected curbside in most communities.
Okay, perfect. And we also have a question from Kayleen. Sorry if I mispronounced that. How do we distinguish the different plastics? We take all of ours to recycle. What else can we do?
Yeah, so that's great that you take it all to recycling. And the good news is at that same facility I was just talking about that isn't very good with soft plastics, it's really good with hard plastics and other items. And at those facilities in the Lower Mainland where our material goes, there's all these cameras with optical sorters. And so they kind of take a photo and use a technology that's able to identify the plastics for us. And so as long as you do your part and rinse your plastics and put them in your green bin without any peanut butter or mayo in them, then this technology is able to tell what plastic it is. And once it identifies it on the conveyor belt, it's really cool. They have these little air jets and they hit it with an air jet, and depending on the type, it will direct it to a different bin, and then it will become a recycled product eventually.
Wonderful. We also have a question from Elaine. How easy is it to obtain data from the community in order to create impactful messaging?
Well, what we do to get like that stat for 1.1 billion single-use items disposed, I have to give a lot of credit to my colleagues and to our consultants. We literally have people digging through a sample of the garbage and separating all the different materials so we can really understand what is being disposed. And then what we did, which was really unique with the single-use items, is we figured out how much on average they all weigh, and then we translated that number to approximately how many items are disposed every year. And I do think, I mean, you can disagree with me and put that in the chat, but I do think that is an effective message to tell people that, you know, we're disposing of 440 items per person per year, and we really need to do better.
Thank you. We have a question from Spencer. How many of those 1.1 billion items disposed end up off the coast of Vancouver? And what are we doing to combat this once they end up in our ocean?
Yeah, so this is an area that I'm less familiar with in terms of like what happens to land-based litter and litter that comes in from other areas. So the 1.1 billion items disposed are items that made it into the waste stream. So somebody put it in a garbage can and was trying to do the right thing. That might have been the only option that they had for that item wherever they were. And so these are things that were properly disposed of or should have been recycled, but were put in the waste stream. In terms of the items that usually we see on the beaches, that can be traveled from all different places, and that's things that people usually accidentally discard or purposely just toss on the side of the road. And so it's a bit of a different statistic in terms of that number, and it's also something that, you know, probably we need to get a little better at handle on. But I don't know. I hope that answers the questions. Feel free, whoever asked the question, to unmute and clarify if you want a little bit of a different answer, if that's not what you were looking for.
Sorry, I didn't understand that the 1.1 billion was stuff that had come in versus just overall. So I didn't realize that it would be the different statistic versus like overall stuff that would be left on beaches or that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and we do get those stats about what's left on beaches from some of the findings. I follow Jenna Jambeck. She's one of the lead scientists if you want to get that kind of stat. We also can look at the shoreline cleanup data. It's kind of citizen science data. So if you're interested in that, those are kind of the places I would look.
Sorry, what was the name of the person that you said you follow again?
Jenna Jambeck. Maybe I can type it in the chat, although hopefully I don't spell her name wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that, Spencer. We have another question from Eleanor. She would like to know, what is the name of our local recycling facility and where is it? And do they offer tours during COVID?
Oh, okay, many questions. So the one that I've been speaking of on this webinar is Merlin's Plastics. And I've toured it in the past, and I'm not sure what their policy is currently with public tours. But what you can do, which is kind of cool, is go to the Recycle BC website, and you can go to the tab that says what happens to my recycling, and you can see through that website kind of all the different paths that your recycling go in. So that's usually at this time, that's kind of what I refer people to. But yeah, hopefully at one point, those kind of facilities will be starting to do tours so people can see what happens.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. So from Eddie, oh, sorry. If people were going to do 3 things, what would have the biggest impact?
Oh, well, as an engineer, I always say it depends, because it depends on what you're replacing. But I think everyday habits make a difference, and bringing your own grocery bag makes a big difference. Trying to bring your own coffee mug or making your coffee at home, if that's your preference, that makes a big difference. All these little things add up and make a huge difference. And one thing that we did see in the data in 2018, and hopefully it's better when we do it again, is there was a lot of chopsticks in the garbage. And so that one really confused me because the chopsticks can go in the green bin. And so there's another tip: put your chopsticks in the green bin and tell your friends.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Karen, we have one last question for you. So do you think municipal governments are providing enough funds to support the programs and efforts to reduce single-use plastic?
Yeah, well, that's a tough one. And what I would say is that my colleagues at our member municipalities are really passionate about reducing waste as well. I think it probably came through to you that I'm quite passionate about reducing waste and tackling single-use items. But right now, members are facing a lot of challenges with the pandemic. And so I think that's important to remember. We are striving together to move forward on this. And we do want to work collaboratively with our members. And if there's this particular municipality that you live in that you want to talk to me about, you can always contact me. But that one's kind of hard to answer just because there's so much going on right now, and we're all working hard to reduce single-use items, and we're all trying to do our part.
Wonderful. I think that's all the time we have for questions. So thank you.
Oh, there's one. Okay. You know what?
Go ahead and answer
If there's more questions, we can always try to answer them after if we have the transcript.
Yeah, we could pass them along as well, because there's quite a few I think that would still like to get answered.
Yeah, and why don't we put them up on our website under the speaker series under this event.
Yeah, and I just, before I don't have the floor anymore, I just really want to thank everyone for joining us on a Wednesday night and for being so engaged. As a speaker, it's really nice to have all of these questions and to have this interaction, especially over Zoom, where it can be a little bit more challenging. So thank you so much.
And Karen, I just want to thank you very much for your presentation. I've been following Karen's work since I got involved with Ocean Ambassadors, and she's really just a really important resource for our region. I think what I took away, Karen, is the importance of individual actions. And that I love your example of the one coffee cup. So you buy 300 cups of coffee a year, times that by 2.5 million people, and it becomes this astronomical number. So really incredible. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And I'm just going to share my screen. So I just wanted to once again say a big thank you to our sponsors, the West Vancouver Foundation, the North Shore News, and Hollyburn Sailing Club. And I wanted to tell you about next month's presenters. So next month on April 14th, we have Alan Langdon and Baljeet Lally from Return It. So you'll recognize that name as the Bottle Depot people. And they're going to talk all about the circular economy and moving towards a world where nothing is waste. So zero waste, and what it means for our oceans. So these are both really interesting speakers, and I hope that you can join us next April 14th. And you can register the same way you did for this event by just going on our website and clicking on the link. So I really want to thank everybody so much for being part of this first event in our series, and hope to see you next month. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please send it along to me. My email is in your confirmation email. And have a great evening and take care.
Thank you, Al.